Welcome to our deep dive into the world of startups.
Mhm.
You've given us some fascinating excerpts from Eric Ries's book, The Lean Startup, to work with here.
Great book.
It seems like you're trying to get a handle on the core principles of the lean startup method
Right.
and maybe how it applies to businesses of all shapes and sizes. And
Absolutely.
we can certainly dive into that today.
Definitely.
I think a lot of people hear startup.
Yeah.
They immediately get this image in their heads
Oh,
of, a bunch of people huddled around a computer in a garage,
right.
fueled by pizza and energy drinks.
Yeah, the classic stereotype.
But Reese really throws that cliche out the window, right?
Oh, he does. He
Yeah.
really challenges that narrow definition.
Yeah.
He defines a startup as any group of people
Mm-hmm.
that are creating something new
Okay.
under conditions of extreme uncertainty.
Okay.
So launching a new product line within a big company
Mm-hmm.
could be considered a startup,
Okay.
a government agency trying to revamp their services. That's a startup, too, in Reese's eyes.
So this deep dive isn't just for Silicon Valley.
Not at all.
The stereotypical
No.
tech company.
I think someone working in a larger organization
Right.
might actually get even more out of these principles.
Okay.
Because think about it, established companies,
Yeah.
they can get kind of stuck in their ways.
They get a little bit too comfortable, right?
Right. They have processes and procedures
Uh-huh.
for everything,
Yeah.
which, can be a good thing for sure,
Right.
but it can also stifle creativity and innovation.
Yeah. Interesting. So we've established that startups aren't just these tech companies in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
But why do so many startups,
Yeah.
whatever their size or industry,
Mm-hmm.
why do they end up failing?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And, it's not for lack of good ideas.
Right.
We both know there's plenty of those out there.
Yeah.
Rees argues that most startups fail
Okay.
because they fall in love with their vision without ever actually testing their assumptions.
Now, in the real world.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's where the lean startup method comes in.
Exactly.
It's all about being more scientific,
Yes.
more data-driven,
More adaptable.
more willing to experiment and adapt.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So instead of spending all this time
Yeah.
on creating this elaborate business plan,
Right.
that might be completely outdated by the time you're finished with it.
Totally.
Rees advocates for something he calls validated learning.
Yes. Love this concept.
So for anyone who has never heard this term before,
Yeah.
what does validated learning actually mean?
Okay, so imagine you're trying to solve a puzzle,
Uh-huh.
but you're doing it in the dark.
Okay.
You keep fumbling around trying different pieces,
Yeah.
but you can't really see what you're doing.
Right.
Validated learning is like turning on the light.
Okay.
It's about gathering data,
Mm-hmm.
testing your assumptions,
Yeah.
and then using those insights to inform your next steps.
Instead of just randomly trying to jam pieces together.
Yes,
It's like
exactly.
He's trying to figure out,
You're looking for the patterns.
yeah, where they actually fit.
Mm-hmm. You got it.
And Rees actually uses an example from his own experience
He does. He tells the story of IMVU.
with his own company, IMVU,
Yep. His own startup.
which I thought was really fascinating because,
Yeah.
even very experienced entrepreneurs
Right.
can make assumptions that just turn out to be totally wrong.
Oh, absolutely.
Hmm.
No one is immune to that.
So tell us a little bit about IMVU and what happened there.
So IMVU started with this idea
Okay.
of creating a 3D avatar add-on
Okay.
for existing instant messaging platforms.
Okay, so you could chat with your friends online as your cool customized avatar.
Exactly, like a little 3D version of
Like,
yourself.
that sounds kind of fun, actually.
Right. It seemed like a cool idea.
Yeah.
And they just assumed that people would want this.
Naturally.
But here's the thing. They actually went out and talked to their target users.
Okay.
And through these conversations,
Mm.
they discovered that their assumption was way off.
So people didn't want to use avatars to chat with their existing friends.
Not really. It turned out
Mm.
people were much more interested in using avatars to make new friends online.
Interesting.
That was a total light bulb moment for the IMVU team.
Wow.
They realized they needed to pivot.
Okay, so what does pivot mean in this context?
It essentially means changing direction based on what you've learned.
Oh, okay.
So they went from being an add-on
Mm.
to a standalone IM network,
Mm.
and that change is what really fueled their success.
So they basically had to throw out their initial idea
Pretty much.
and start over.
Yeah, it takes courage to do that, though.
Yeah, especially when you've already sunk,
Mm.
who knows how much time and money into that.
Absolutely. It
Yeah.
can be tough to let go.
But that's a great illustration of
Yeah.
how validated learning can actually lead to much smarter decisions.
Couldn't agree more. They could have just kept pushing that ad on,
Right.
assuming they knew best.
Right.
But by actually talking to their users,
Yeah.
they uncovered this huge opportunity.
And that's something that anyone can apply,
Exactly.
whether you're building a tech startup or not.
It's about testing your assumptions
Right.
and being open to being surprised.
Okay, so let's say you're working on a new marketing campaign.
Okay.
You could use the lean startup approach to test your assumptions about your target audience, the messaging, the channels you're using.
All of that.
All of it before you go all in on this big launch.
You got it.
Yeah.
It's about running those small experiments, gathering the data, and refining your approach based on what you learn.
I like that.
It's all about iteration.
Yeah.
And continuous improvement.
So Ries also gives us another example in the book.
Because he shares a lot of great stories.
How about Zappos?
Oh, yeah, Zappos.
The online shoe giant.
Love those guys.
They didn't start out as this massive company with, warehouses and websites and all this stuff.
Nope. Their first experiment was super simple.
Yeah.
Nick Swinmurn, the founder,
Uh-huh.
he just wanted to test one basic assumption. Would people buy shoes online?
It seems like a pretty obvious assumption now.
Right. But back then, it was a big question mark.
Yeah. Okay.
So what did he do? He took pictures of shoes from local stores
Okay.
and posted them online.
So he was basically running an online shoe store
Pretty much.
without actually having any shoes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
That's wild.
It was a way to validate the core idea
Yeah.
with very minimal investment.
I bet a lot of people told him he was crazy.
Oh, I'm sure they did.
But it worked.
It did.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of the lean startup approach.
Yeah.
It's about testing your assumptions.
Yeah.
Even the ones that seem obvious.
Yeah.
And being open to being surprised by what you learn.
I like that.
You never know what you might discover.
You never know.
Yeah, it's like that old saying, assumptions are the mother of all screw-ups.
Right.
And in the startup world,
Mm-hmm.
those screw-ups can be really costly.
It could be very expensive. Yeah.
So you want to avoid those as much as possible.
So we've talked about validated learning and pivoting.
Mm-hmm.
Ries also highlights this concept of a minimum viable product or MVP.
The MVP.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
So think of the MVP as the simplest possible version
okay.
of your product
Oh, okay.
that you can put in front of users to start getting feedback.
So it's not about launching a perfect finished product right out of the gate?
No, not at all.
Okay.
It's about getting something out there quickly
Okay.
and then learning from how people interact with it.
So it's like a prototype, but you're actually putting it out in the real world for people to use.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay.
And that real-world feedback
Uh-huh.
is so valuable.
Okay.
It helps you figure out what's working, what's not,
Yeah.
what needs to be changed.
Does it make sense?
Remember Groupon?
Groupon. Yeah, of course.
I mean, who doesn't love a good deal?
Right.
But it's interesting to think about how they actually got started.
Yeah, I've never really thought about that.
Yeah, so their MVP was as bare bones as it gets.
Yeah.
They literally started with a WordPress blog,
Okay.
offering a single pizza deal.
No way.
Yeah, that's it.
That's how they launched a billion-dollar company.
It's incredible, right?
That's wild.
It just goes to show
Yeah.
you don't need a fancy website
Right.
or a ton of features
Uh-huh.
to test your core assumptions.
So once you've got your MVP out there,
Yeah,
how do you actually measure progress?
that's a great question. And that's where innovation accounting comes in.
Okay, I have to ask, what are the right metrics to be tracking?
Yes, this is key.
Because I feel like so many companies get caught up in those vanity metrics.
Oh, totally.
Website hits, downloads, all of these things that look good on paper.
Yeah, they might look impressive,
But,
but they don't necessarily tell you.
right, if your business is actually healthy.
Exactly. And that's the trap that a lot of people fall into.
So what are the right metrics then?
So innovation accounting is about looking beyond those surface level numbers and tracking metrics that actually measure learning.
Okay.
So it's not just about how many people visited your website.
Right.
It's about asking, is this experiment bringing us closer to product market fit?
Okay, so product market fit, that's when you found a product that people actually want
Yes.
and that there's a big enough market to actually support it.
Exactly. It's that sweet spot
Okay.
where your product and your market are perfectly aligned.
So innovation accounting is about figuring out if you're on the path to finding that fit.
You got it.
Okay.
And It helps you avoid wasting time and resources
Makes sense.
on things that aren't moving the needle.
It's about making sure that you're actually headed in the right direction and not just kind of spinning your wheels.
Yeah, exactly.
And this is where I think pivoting comes in again.
It does.
Because sometimes you realize, based on your data,
Right.
Based on what you're seeing,
Based on the feedback.
that you need to adjust your course. I think a lot of people might view pivoting as, admitting defeat.
Yeah, like, oh, my original idea didn't work, so now I have to scramble.
Right, exactly.
But that's not what it's about at all. Pivoting is not about giving up. It's about being smart.
Okay.
And adjusting your approach
Yeah.
based on real-world feedback.
So like in the example of IMVU,
Right.
they pivoted based on what they learned from their users.
They were willing to change direction.
Yeah.
And it led them to success.
What's another example of a company that successfully pivoted?
Oh, there are so many great examples out there.
Okay.
But one that comes to mind is Wealthfront.
Oh, I've heard of Wealthfront.
Yeah. So they started as this platform for amateur investors
Okay.
to manage their own portfolios.
Okay.
But their data showed them that users were actually more interested in getting access to professional financial advice.
Interesting.
So they pivoted away from that original model and launched a service that connects clients with financial experts.
So instead of trying to do it themselves, they wanted help from the pros.
Exactly. And that pivot is what made them a leader in the fintech space.
Wow, that's fascinating.
It is, right?
How a company can completely transform itself based on what it learns from its customers.
It's amazing what can happen when you're open to change.
Okay, so we've got validated learning MVPs, innovation, accounting, pivoting.
It's all connected.
These are all really important elements of the lean startup method.
Yeah.
But Ries also talks about
Yes.
borrowing principles from the world of manufacturing.
He does.
This idea of working in small batches.
Small batches, yes.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Sure. So it might seem counterintuitive,
Okay.
especially in a fast-paced startup environment
Right.
where everyone's trying to move quickly.
Right.
But think about it this way.
Okay.
Would you rather spend months building a complex product and then discover a major flaw? Or would you rather catch that flaw early on when it's much easier to fix?
Yeah, like if you're baking a cake.
Exactly.
And you realize halfway through you forgot a key ingredient.
You've wasted a lot of time and ingredients.
Right, exactly.
So small batches are all about breaking down large tasks into smaller, more manageable chunks.
Okay.
It allows you to get feedback and make adjustments along the way.
So you're constantly iterating and improving.
Yes.
Instead of waiting until the very end to find out if everything works as planned.
Exactly. It's about building that feedback loop.
I like it.
Into every stage of the process.
And this could apply to more than just product development, right?
Absolutely.
You could use this for marketing campaigns, content creation, really any
project.
Where you're trying to create something new.
You got it. It's a mindset shift.
Okay.
It's about embracing experimentation and learning as continuous processes.
Not just something you do at the beginning. Exactly. It's an ongoing thing.
So Ries also emphasizes this idea of building an adaptive organization.
Yes. This is so important.
It's not just about applying these principles to your product, but it's about creating a company culture that embraces continuous learning and improvement.
A culture of learning.
Yeah.
He talks about this technique called the 5 whys.
The 5 whys!
Which is brilliant for getting to the root of problems.
Okay.
So instead of just pointing fingers when something goes wrong, you ask, why 5 times?
5 times?
To uncover the underlying cause.
So you're basically like a 3-year-old.
I know, right?
Who just keeps asking why.
But in a business context, it can be really powerful. It helps you identify systemic issues rather than just treating the symptom.
Like putting a Band-Aid on something.
Exactly. You got to get to the root of the problem.
So Ries gives this great anecdote about IMVU.
He does. He tells a lot of great stories.
Where they intentionally asked new engineers to make a change to the production environment on their very first day.
On their first day?
Yeah.
Wow, that's bold.
It was a way to test the robustness of their systems.
Interesting.
So if it broke easily, it meant their process was too fragile.
Makes sense.
And needed to be improved.
So they were basically encouraging their new hires to break things.
Yeah, in a controlled way, of course.
Right, to expose the weaknesses.
And it takes a lot of trust to do that.
It does. It says a lot about their culture.
They weren't afraid of things breaking.
No, they saw those breakages as opportunities to learn.
To make their systems stronger.
Exactly.
And I think that's such a valuable lesson.
It is. It's not about being perfect.
Right.
It's about being willing to learn and adapt.
And that adaptability is crucial.
It is, especially in a world that's changing so quickly.
Ries also talks about how companies need to balance their efforts.
Yes, across different types of work.
Okay.
Startup growth optimization and sustaining innovation.
That's a lot to juggle. It's like a portfolio.
Okay.
So startup is about exploring new ideas and finding that product market fit.
Okay.
Growth is about scaling your business once you've found that fit.
Makes sense.
Optimization
Yeah.
is about making your existing processes more efficient.
Okay.
And then sustaining innovation is about developing new products and services.
So it's about recognizing that different stages of a company's life cycle require different approaches and skill sets.
Absolutely.
And I think this applies to individuals as well.
It does.
You know, someone who thrives in a chaotic, fast-paced startup environment might not be as happy in a larger, more structured company.
That's a great point.
It's about finding the right fit.
Yeah.
Both for the company and for the individual. So it sounds like the lean startup is just as much about building the right company culture as it is about building the right product.
Yeah. You can have the most innovative product in the world.
Right.
But if you don't have the team and the culture to support it, you're not going to succeed.
And that kind of leads me to my next thought, which is this idea of being comfortable with failure.
Ooh, big one.
Which seems so counterintuitive, right?
It does, especially in the business world.
In the business world.
Where failure is often seen as this terrible thing.
It's like the worst thing that could possibly happen.
Right. You're supposed to avoid it at all costs.
Right.
But Ries actually flips that idea on its head.
Yeah.
He argues that failure is inevitable.
Okay.
It's a necessary part of the innovation process.
So it's not something to be feared.
No.
It's something to be embraced.
It's like a stepping stone.
I love that.
Yeah, it takes the pressure off.
It does.
It's like, okay, we're probably going to screw up a few times along the way.
Right.
But that's okay.
As long as we learn from it.
Exactly. As long as we're learning from those mistakes.
It reminds me of that Thomas Edison quote.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work.
Classic. It's about shifting your perspective and seeing those failures as opportunities.
To learn.
Exactly, to get closer to that solution.
Ries also talks about the importance of being customer-centric.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think seems pretty obvious.
It does.
Right.
But it's easy to lose sight of that.
It is.
When you're so focused on building.
Yields.
Right, exactly.
So how do we make sure that we're staying focused on the customer?
Ries is a big believer in getting out of the building.
Okay.
Talking to real customers.
Okay.
Understanding their needs, their pain points.
And he actually challenges this kind of traditional approach of relying on market research and these elaborate business plans.
Because those are often based on assumptions.
Right.
That haven't been tested.
In the real world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He encourages entrepreneurs to get their MVP in front of users as quickly as possible.
So it all comes back to validated learning.
It does.
Getting out of the building.
Talking to customers.
Running experiments. Gathering data.
Building that feedback loop.
And using all of that to continuously learn and improve.
To build something people actually want.
So if someone is listening to this and they're just starting out on their entrepreneurial journey, what would be the most important takeaway from the lean startup?
I think the most important thing is to embrace that mindset of experimentation and continuous learning.
So it's not about having all the answers up front.
No.
It's about being willing to test your assumptions.
To fail fast.
To pivot when necessary.
And to always be learning from your customer.
And to remember that this is a marathon, not a sprint. You know you're going to hit some bumps along the way.
You will.
But it's about having the resilience.
And the adaptability.
To keep moving forward.
The lean startup can be a great guide for that.
It provides a really nice framework, I think.
Yeah, for navigating the uncertainty.
And for building a business that can thrive.
In a world that's constantly changing.
It's not just a book about building businesses.
No.
It's a book about building a better way of working.
A better way of thinking.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to sum it up.
It can really change how you approach any project.
Any challenge.
Any endeavor.
Where you're trying to make a real impact.
Exactly.
Well, this was quite a journey.
It was.
I feel like we only scratched the surface of the lean startup.
There's so much more to explore.
But hopefully this deep dive has given our listener some food for thought.
Some new tools for their toolkit.
The new perspective on how to approach building and growing a business.
And remember, the most important thing
Yes.
is to take action.
Don't just read the book.
No, put it into practice.
Experiment, learn, adapt.
And never stop iterating.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the lean startup.
It was a pleasure.
We'll be back soon with another exploration of your source material.